Good night, bipartisan border deal. We hardly knew ye. Speaker Mike Johnson has firmly, definitively killed the bill, announcing that the GOP-led House will not take up the legislation at all, will not vote on it. Here's Johnson explaining that.
But much more has to be done, of course, to secure the border. And what the Senate produced this week is silent on that issue. Senator McConnell and I have spoken about this in frank sessions, and let me be clear here again this morning. The Republican-led House will not be jammed or forced into passing a foreign aid bill that was opposed by most Republican senators and does nothing to secure our own border. It's time for Washington to start showing some love to Americans. On Valentine's Day, this is a good day to point this out. You need to listen to the American people and their needs and take action. And that's why House leadership will continue to govern with Americans' interests at heart.
As a result of the torpedo deal, some Democrats wonder if they can actually turn this to their advantage and take the GOP and Donald Trump to task for not taking up this legislation. Per the AP, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called Trump's rejection of the border legislation, quote, a gift for Democrats, and said they plan to constantly, over the next year, remind voters that it was Republicans who torpedoed the deal. He says that strategy has already paid dividends, with the Democrats picking up the George Santos seat in New York. That Democrat, Tom Suozzi, campaigning on tougher border enforcement and winning the special election earlier this week, flipping a House seat away from the Republicans.
Commentators are making the same argument about Texas Governor Greg Abbott's aggressive campaign on the border, something our next guest noted in an article for the Houston Chronicle yesterday, comparing Abbott's current campaign to the Alamo. From the Chronicle, just as Texas rebels appealed to white Americans to join them, Abbott has called on fellow GOP governors to send troops and police to join his quixotic border standoff. And like the Alamo fighters, Abbott knows he will likely lose the battle, but hopes to win a war. Here now to discuss the border is Chris Tomlinson, business columnist with the Houston Chronicle. Chris, welcome to Rising.
Thank you for having me on.
Can we address, just to start, what is in this border bill? We heard Johnson there just say that it basically does nothing to enhance border security and that that's still a priority for Republicans. Is that true?
You know, I don't know what bill he read. The one I saw spent $20 billion on border security. It was going to hire 1,300 Border Patrol agents to guard the fence, so to speak. It was going to hire 1,600 asylum officers to help deal with this influx of asylum seekers. It was also going to take much of the asylum process out of the courts, which would speed up deportations. So I don't know what bill he was talking about. The one that I saw, the Border Patrol Union fully supported and said would be a great deal of help.
How do people who live in your state, who live near the border, for whom border security is an important issue, how are they feeling about this? Are they agreeing with the GOP that Biden could take action on this issue but isn't, that Trump is someone to trust in to take care of the border, that this deal was insufficient and was mostly just a cash giveaway to foreign governments? Or is there real frustration that the bill didn't get taken up by the House, didn't get made into law?
You know, Texans are very frustrated with inaction in Congress. We have been dealing with this for 2 decades. Readers of the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio Express News, this is a big story for them. They follow it very closely. We're seeing the tens of thousands of people coming to the border. And we're frankly a little thankful that Governor Abbott is helping distribute them around the country because our border towns can't handle this level of influx. But what's really at issue here is people making politics out of the immigration issue. Congress's inaction just adds to that frustration. For us, it's not an abstract issue, it's a real one.
Has Governor Abbott weighed in on this debate that's happening in Congress? Has he offered any words that would suggest that he supports the bipartisan border legislation, or is that just too politically thorny, given that this has really become a sort of politicized, as you made reference to, tool in Donald Trump's toolkit, as he seems to believe that a lack of action on the border ultimately benefits him in the general election.
You know, a few weeks ago, Governor Abbott said that he wanted to see action. He wanted to see this kind of legislation passed because it's what we need. You know, the border is a tangle of lawsuits right now. Immigrant rights activists are filing suit. Local authorities are filing suit. What we need is a new law. And initially, Governor Abbott was calling for that. But once Donald Trump said that he was opposed to this bill in particular and to, frankly, any law that might make the Biden administration look good, Governor Abbott's gone silent on this issue.
And what about these calls for people to come and help with border enforcement, you know, of their own volition? Given and I think this sentiment does exist, not just on the right, that authorities aren't doing enough, or that the federal authorities aren't doing enough, and thus more local authorities must take matters into their own hands. Is this call being listened to?
You know, we've seen governors from other states agree to send National Guard and state law enforcement. We've seen a few militias volunteer and come down. It's a mixed bag. A lot of times the National Guards from other parts of the country are mostly symbolic. They're not doing a lot. It's a little dangerous on the private militia side. You know, we saw the FBI arrest several militia members in Tennessee for allegedly plotting to shoot people who come across the border. And we have militias who are operating down there now who are frankly pretty scary. This is not solving the problem, though. Most of these asylum seekers are crossing at formal border points, and they're following the legal procedure. And it's the legal procedure that needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, there was just an incident very far away from the border, but in New York, where kind of online, live on Hannity, former mayoral candidate who was part of a sort of a vigilante justice group in New York, proudly showed themselves arresting people that they thought were a person that they thought was a migrant, an undocumented person in New York City. And it turned out that that person was an American from the Bronx who just happened to be speaking Spanish. So you can see the potential pitfalls of random unaffiliated vigilante types coming to police the border on their own reconnaissance. Can you give us a sense of the scale of that? To what extent there are people, whether they're National Guard troops or other individuals, who have come down to the border? And do we know anything about what they've actually been doing, and if there have been any successes, any failures, any risky behavior, and also what the local temperament is toward those groups?
The local temperament obviously is anti these groups. You know, border towns are among the safest in the country. They have very low crime rates. Immigrants commit crimes on a much lower percentage than native-born Americans. Also, Texas is majority Hispanic. It's only 40% Anglo down here. So it's hard to tell just by looking at someone whether or not they are a citizen. 40% of the workforce in these border towns are Mexican citizens who cross the border every day to work, and they go back every afternoon. So when these groups from out of state come down, they're often very confused. They can't really understand what's happening. And the National Guard, the Texas National Guard, has only seized 2.5 miles of border, of a 1,000-mile-long border. So it's what's happening is really just a drop in the bucket, and frankly, not very helpful.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.